Hello and welcome back to another episode of DevLabs. In this episode, we're going to be going over some HTML and the very basics of it. So first of all, we're obviously going to go over what you would do straight away is if you was to load up a completely blank whatever you're using, but we'll get you from essentially blank to this, and I'll tell you also what it all means. So first of all, I'll tell you what it means, and then I'll tell you how we get there. So first of all, where you've got the I believe it's the greater than symbol, exclamation mark, doc type HTML, and then another, this time it's a less than symbol. What we're doing here is basically telling the browser that this is HTML, essentially. This is sort of declaring the version, this doc type. And then this is sort of the value almost that we are assigning it. And you know, if we're working with HTML, we always need to remember to have this. Otherwise, it just won't work. And then obviously moving down the page, if we close it up a bit, it might help. We have to open a so essentially just a HTML tag, and then you can close it, and then we also need to make sure that we're closing off this tag, and it goes right at the very bottom. Once we've done that, you then need to come up here and input lang equals en. So essentially, obviously, HTML is just the language that we're using here, the coding language, and then we need to tell the browser what language we are going to we want the website to be in, and for English that is en. You don't have to put en really if you're using if the website is going to be based around a different language, then use that, but just make sure that you know the sign for it. And then once we have done that, we need to basically have a head here, which is we need to have an open and then a closed element of the head as well. We also need a body, so an opening body here, and then we also need to close it. And then if you've done this already, it would show here. But essentially, what these are here, so where we have the head, so we refer to these in HTML as elements. And to form an element, it would always have an opening tag, which is referred to as an element like this, for example. And then it would always have a closing tag as well, which essentially just means we're adding a slash here, which closes it. Now, in some instances, there are some HTML elements that don't require a closing tag, and we'll get more into that as the tutorials go through. But for now, that is all I'm going to sort of say for the moment, as we don't need any more than that. Okay, so within your head tag, which is an element, this is basically where we store all of our meta tags, title, description, keywords, linking other pages that we need is basically going to go. So we would first of all have a meta charset UTF-8 tag. Now essentially this is just sort of the telling the almost the version of the browser to look for. And then moving down, this one here is very important. This is almost setting the scale for the website. So obviously initially we'd have a name, which is viewport. Make sure that you put viewport there as well. And then in the content, we have to make sure we put in quotation marks width equals device minus width. And then we're setting the initial scale as 1. So essentially, if this is wrong when it comes to optimizing your website to work on smaller screens, you'll find that it will be slightly off, and this would be because we haven't set the initial scale of the HTML document, otherwise known as a web page. And then, pretty straightforward, we have a title element here within the head tag, and this is just setting the title of the web page. So let me get you an example. When you go on to, let's say, if it's going to load, so let's just say that we're going to go on to YouTube. When you click on the tab, it's basically going to show here. So when you highlight over it or when you're on it, it will just show the title of the web page, which is that. Okay, so I have just come back after adding a few more bits here that are useful for being added onto a web page. So first of all, we have another meta tag here, which we're just adding a name to it, which is called description. And then we're adding obviously the content of what we want to show in that description. So really you can put anything here. So say for example, I was making a e-commerce website that was selling flip-flops. I would just put here in this content a bit about the company and that we sell flip-flops, for example. I don't know. You can really put anything here, but for this sake, I've just put HTML tutorial website. And then you also have another meta tag, which is the keywords here. And then you just assign in the content. And then you want to do this slightly different. So for every keyword, you want to add a comma so it separates them. But you just put any sort of keywords that would help your website show up in here of what people would search for. But yeah. And then obviously the final one is just author, and then it's content dev labs. So yeah. And last but not least, one more thing that you would do is link in a style sheet, for example. So you do that by just putting link rel equals, and then in quotation marks style sheet followed by href, which we will cover a bit more what this means. And then you just put the location of your style sheet, but we don't have one at the moment, but we will get into creating that and covering over that. But essentially you'd want to, well, it's a lot better in my opinion to create a style sheet and have all of your styles contained into one document rather than inline styling, which we'll go over. But yeah, so now that we've done that, I'm just going to show you how it should be typed, how it should be laid out. Okay, so obviously we want to add our less than and greater than symbols, and then going on to what I mentioned here, we're doing doc type and then HTML. So we need to tell the browser what we are doing. And then we are opening a HTML element. You may also need to manually add the close symbol, because it doesn't automatically do it if you're using VS Code unless you have a plugin. But I have a plugin for this, so it adds it automatically. Okay, so once you have added your close tag, if you have to, just come on in here, in between both of these elements here, and you're gonna begin to add the other core elements per se. So first of all, I'm just gonna click enter, and then within this, I'm gonna create a head tag. And again, you may have to do this manually yourself if you don't have the same. So yeah, once you've put in your head elements, go ahead and come in between them again and click the enter button, and then this is just where we're going to begin to add our meta tags. So the very first one that we need to do is our charset one. So you just do meta charset UTF-8 and then close that off. So as you can see, like the head element requires a closing tag here, but this meta tag doesn't. And this sort of briefly touches base as to why some elements require a closing tag and some don't require them. So it's just important to know which elements do and which elements don't. But yeah. So once you've done that one, again, we're just doing a meta name equals, and then we're doing viewport here. And then we are just going to basically copy what we've done above. So it's width equals device minus width. Then we just put inside the quotation marks, we do a comma, and then initial dash scale. And you're basically, make sure to close it off if you haven't already. And we're basically just going to continue like this now until we have added these. So I'm going to quickly go and add the rest of them. But you're basically just typing them out as you see them here. And then I'll come back once I've got down to this link one here. Okay, so I have now finished that, which is good. Because I don't have to do it again, but I have just looked and I can see here in this HTML one we haven't added the language, so we're just going to do lang equals en for this one, which means that we're just setting the language of the browser. Okay, so now that we've all done this and we've copied in the remainder of the information, just where you've got this head one here, you're going to want to click enter again, so we go onto a new line, and we need to make sure that we're between the closing HTML tag, and the closing head tag here. So the next one that we need to put in is the body, which everything that you do now is going to be within this body, so it's important to remember. And then quite often you'll have a script opening and closing tag here at the bottom, which you can just leave like that, which will go over more what you put here. But moving forward now, everything that you're going to do is going to be enclosed within this body. It's important to remember that HTML is probably, I would say, particularly easy in terms of what you need to do. It tends to get a little bit more difficult when it comes to styling. But one more thing to also know about HTML, for example. So it works off of a very parent-child-like structure. So what I mean by that is all of these elements here, so the meta and the title and the link, these are all children of the head tag. So it's just important to remember that, as it definitely does come into more of an effect when it comes to like styling and whatnot. But I believe that this is the very basics of the HTML. If you get stuck or you have any questions, then make sure to pop them in the description in the comment section below, and I'll happily answer them. And that is it for the HTML basics, which is how to initially get set up and started. And we'll be going more in depth in the next episode. I'll tried and kept it as short and sweet as possible. But yes, if you have any questions, don't forget to pop them in the comments below, and also don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for me. Thank you for watching, and take care.